We're live. We're live. Nick, you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready to roll. Yeah, let me pull up. Okay. I got a bunch of things going on today. All right. So
take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, let me explain what we're doing first and foremost here. So I'm going to be showing. You can probably tell that my background looks a little different. I'm probably not. I just look and sound worse than normal. Expect. Hopefully, you've noticed that, right? Because what we're going to do is I'm actually right now what I'm using is just the most basic stuff I could possibly use, right? I've got my overhead light on above me, which we'll explain why that's a bad idea in just a few minutes. I'm using the webcam that's built into my laptop. I'm using the microphone that's built into my laptop. And so what we're doing is this is giving you kind of a baseline, all right? So this, for one, like I have a pretty high-end gaming laptop. So I actually have like a decent camera compared to what a lot of you probably have. But what's weird about it is I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I'm typing. My camera is at the bottom of my screen.
That's dumb.
It is actually up here and the camera is really weird. Like I've never seen a other computer that has the setup like that. So right off the bat, like I can't even use it because it's way down there and it's just weird. But so that's one thing we're going to improve. I've got some microphones for you. I've got some lights for you. I've got a bunch of stuff. Oh yeah, I do. There you go.
Chris's comment. Chris has
the best comments, by the way.
I had the chat pulled up, so I actually saw that one. So anyway, so we're gonna be showing you basically how to go from this to a much better setup for under $300, which is really awesome. It's actually include the back.
We could have just edited this whole thing and be like, just buy an iPhone, we're done.
You would think, man. I mean, I know that's your answer to everything. Buy an iPhone. But honestly, the iPhone would be like 5 times as expensive, man. So, you got to.
That's very true.
Right? That's very paying true. A lot more. I mean, you could do a lot more with it, obviously. But we're going to show you some stuff. And what's really cool about this is even since, I haven't bought a lot of new equipment other than like gimbals and things like that for the past 6 months. And in that time, there has been a massive explosion in the amount of this kind of equipment that's being manufactured, predominantly in China, obviously. And the prices have sort of cratered in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of options that are much more affordable. There's a lot of diversity. And so the setup that we came up with here today that I'm going to be kind of showing you one piece at a time is actually pretty extensive for the price, right? So I got a lot of moving parts today. So as I've said a couple times in these webinars, please bear with me because there is going to be like 3 or 4 different camera switches, a couple different microphones, a lot of stuff going on. So first things first, for those of you that are here live, we did say that we would share with you our equipment list. So I'm putting that in the chat right now. Please, someone click it and make sure it works. Because last time I did this, I shared a link that was not working. So this time we verified ahead of time it should work, but that's the link for the equipment list, right? What you're going to find on that list is everything that we're talking about today, plus additional options, right? So this is a really affordable setup we're going to be showing you today, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're all going to want it. Some of you are going to look at some of this and go, well, great, it's under $300, but maybe I can afford to spend a little bit more money. Maybe I'm actually looking to do something a little bit nicer. In that document, you're going to see links to the other equipment. So like the stuff that I traditionally use in our studio setup, that's also listed in there. And there's even a few additional items like gimbals. Anyway, so that equipment list is available. All the links for everything that we're talking about today are in there. All right. That being said, you can't quote us on prices because as I'll talk about with one of these microphones, the price literally changed in between me buying it like 3 days ago and now. So actually I think it's the webcam the price changed on. So, bear with us on that front because things do change. But you got a lot of good stuff in there. Okay. What I'm going to do the rest of the time is we are just going to kind of walk through each of these changes, each of these sort of additional pieces that you can be putting into play, show you the sort of full setup at the end. I'm going to try to give you some ideas in terms of how you should be setting this up and sort of, the arrangement and everything like that. And then at the end, I'm going to come back to our slides and we have a couple sort of final thoughts for you, a couple ideas in terms of why this stuff matters, how you should be utilizing it. And then we'll wrap up at that point. Okay. Before I get into anything else, I wanted to just mention this, and then we're going to get into the demonstration. And that is because we're getting close to 2021. I just want to give you a quick plug for our content calendar, right? Now, this is a calendar that we put together that's specifically for real estate agents, right? So that's really what this is all for. This is meant for real estate agents. And obviously it's particularly useful as we get close to 2021. So for those of you that are starting to prepare for next year, what I highly, highly recommend you do is that you start planning out your content now, right? So if you can actually create for yourself a calendar, at least one idea per week. Our version has at least 2 ideas per week. But what that's going to mean is that you have a floor for 2021, right? Video is going to be extremely important next year, just like it was this year, probably even more so. But please make sure you're doing the planning. We've done as much of it as we can for you. So if you pick up our content calendar, you're going to have a lot of that done in advance. But even if you don't buy ours, please make sure you start working on this as soon as possible. So you come into 2021 with a whole bunch of ideas outlined, you're much more likely to actually execute. And Chris is chiming in this awesome content, already making plans from the list. That's awesome, Chris. Way to go. Cool. So let's go ahead and get rolling here. Like I said, a lot of moving parts today. So I appreciate your sort of understanding as we go. Okay. So let me actually turn off the screen share. And so what I want you to do, so here's what I'd recommend, right? You have control over your view when you watch these webinars. So I would highly recommend that for these purposes, you actually switch to viewing my screen full size. For one, just because I'm much prettier than these other guys. And 2 is I want you to really see all the changes that are going to be happening here, okay? Because this is one of the things, right? When you see a video setup, just kind of the way it is, there's no context, right? So you might see it and be like, oh, that looks and sounds pretty good, right? Or you might think it looks and sounds terrible, but unless you see it side by side or you can kind of clearly see the differences, it's sometimes hard to tell what actually changed. And so I just want you to kind of focus on my particular image for at least the next 20 minutes or so. And I'm going to swap out things sort of one at a time. And I want you to you can even tell me in the chat, do you think it looks better? Do you think it sounds better? All that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so let's start here. And you're going to also notice that as I combine some of these things, you're going to feel like, the net effect is even better than the individual change, okay? So first thing we're going to do right now, let's kind of recap. I'm starting from scratch. So right now I'm using my built-in webcam. Like I mentioned, if you have joined since the webinar started, my webcam is actually in the bottom of my screen on my laptop, which is kind of weird, right? So if I go to type, you can see my fingers right in the way. It's not a good spot for it, but that's where it is. In addition to that, I'm also using the built-in microphone in the computer. And the final thing I'll say is that I'm also using the overhead lights in the room. And I'm actually technically using a little bit of natural light. I've got 2 windows, make sure my finger's in the shot, sort of in those directions. And those are giving me, just a little bit of natural light. I have the blinds closed, but there is some light coming through there, okay? So this is right now a very common situation, right? Now, I have the shiplap wall behind me. I couldn't take that down temporarily for the purposes of this webinar. But with the way the camera is facing, you can actually even see a little bit of the ceiling over here. You can see the little section of the wall where I don't have shiplap at the top. And so honestly, it doesn't look and it probably doesn't sound great, right? Now, can you get by doing this? Absolutely. But there's definitely a lot of things that you can improve here that shouldn't cost much money. And actually, some are actually free, right? So even if I just sort of open those blinds, that would right off the bat improve things, right? So let's go through these one at a time and see if I can't sort of improve on what I currently have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my other webcam, right? So right off the bat, for me, because my camera is down at the bottom, you're going to see sort of an improvement in the angle of what you're seeing. But let's take a look at this shot here. Okay. All right. So right off the bat, that's a lot easier to look at, right? So now you're not looking at me at a strange angle, and it's pretty clear, right? The definition of this camera is not bad. So this is the first product that I want to talk about today, right? And I'm going to name the names of these things as we go, but obviously you have the equipment list, so don't feel like you have to worry about writing them down. This is the Nexigo, Nexigo N930AF space FHD space webcam, all right? The FAD stands for full HD. Now, 4 days ago, this webcam cost $40. As of today, when we went to get the link for this webinar, I think it costs $54, right? That's still pretty affordable in my mind, but obviously that price did change a little bit. So one thing I will mention is that pricing for these things and the options that are available are all over the map, right? There's a ton of different options out there. And I would see that this is probably the kind of thing where the price is going to go up, the price is going to go down, it's going to change, but it's in that range, right? So we're talking $40 when I first bought it, 54 as of today. And so one of the things that I want you to see here, though, is that no matter what webcam I use, what's going to really matter here, because even if I had, typically when I do these webinars, I actually have a full HD DSLR camera, and I'm running it through a video card into my computer. It's a pretty nice camera. No matter what camera I'm using, I'm still going to look like this, okay? And I think this should be one of those sort of main takeaways from this presentation today, is that I still kind of look like crap because of the lights, all right? So keep that in mind. No matter what camera you get, if your lighting is not set up correctly, and if you're not thinking about the lighting that you're using the right way, it's still not going to look very good, right? So the image you're seeing of me, and again, we're on Zoom, so internet connection is going to have an impact on it. It might be a fairly clear image, but the lighting is really terrible, right? And you can even see like, so it's always hard to remember which side is which when you're looking at Zoom, but like this side of my face is a little darker than this side. And that's because the overhead light is actually right here. Okay, it's almost directly, it's kind of like 2 feet to the left and out in front of me over here to the top, okay? Now, so this is the first change I made, is the camera, but watch this, all right? Now the lights that I got, I'm actually, of all the stuff we picked up for this webinar today, the lights are probably the coolest part. And one of the things that's cool about them is they come with a remote control. All right, so watch this. All right, so now I'm getting really bright. I'm gonna need to turn that down just a little bit. There we go. All right, and now let me go ahead and turn off the overhead so you can see the full effect. All right, how does that look? What do you guys think so far?
Sexy.
Looking sexy? All right.
I was just going to say much better, but I'll go with Tristan's.
You can go with sexy. It's all right. You can say sexy, Jeff. It's okay. All right. So let's play around with this a little bit. So here's what's really cool about these lights. All right. Is I've got this remote control right here. All right. And I'm not sure how well you can see that on camera. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. This particular set of lights, what it comes with, kind of blew my mind when we found this the other day, right? So these are softbox lights. I'm going to show them to you in just a minute when we show you the kind of full setup here in the room. We talk about where to position the lights. They're softbox lights, which is, I would say, probably the best form of lighting that you can use for video. They are LED lights, all right, which means that they are much more adjustable. Most of the lights you get in these sort of cheaper soft boxes are halogen bulbs, right? So they're going to come in just sort of one color rating. There's going to be very little that you can sort of control there. And you generally can't turn down the brightness. So these lights are LEDs. They are controllable in terms of both warmth and brightness. So let me just show you a couple quick examples here. So I can go down in brightness. And it kind of looks like I'm changing the settings on the camera, but I'm literally using this remote for the lights that are sitting here in the room, right? So you can control that, which is pretty cool. And then the other part of this that you control is the temperature. So and when I say temperature, you're gonna see what I mean, right? So I'm gonna kind of make this more of a warm color of light. And you're gonna see, you can actually, I can't see it because I'm colorblind, but according to Vanessa, there's the green that shows up in the wall here. So we were adjusting for that. You always got to check with somebody else when you're colorblind before you do this kind of demonstrations, right? And then we can go the other direction, which is we're heading more in the blue spectrum, right? So it's cool. It's kind of considered cool versus warm light, right? So when things are on the sort of blue end of the spectrum, they're considered a cool sort of, a color of light. When they're on the red end of the spectrum, that's considered warm, right? So I can control both of those, go in either direction, and then I can also control the brightness on either one, right? So this is a lot of fun just to sort of play around with. I mean, you could literally just sort of mess with people when you're in the middle of Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Another thing that's cool about this is that there's a preset here that I can just sort of click on. It's going to bring it back to a nice neutral, and then I can just sort of adjust the brightness from there. So I had these set up kind of ideally before, and I'm probably messing it up at this point. But so that's the lights, right? So already, and I'm actually let me just see if I can go back to the original setup real quick, just for 10 seconds to show you the difference here. So this was the original camera. And then if I turn off those lights, that's kind of what it looked like. And actually the sensitivity of this camera is pretty good. So it adjusts pretty well to the lack of light, but that's the original. And then here it is when I switch to the other camera and turn the lights back on, all right? So you're seeing much easier to look at. properly lit. I mean, I really want to emphasize that, all right? If there's nothing else you do when it comes to trying to improve the quality of your videos, just simply making sure your light is coming from the right direction is a big deal, okay? I've got the 2 lights right here, but that being said, I also have 2 windows right there, okay? And so I wanted to talk, and I actually closed the windows today because I really wanted to focus on the equipment for the purposes of our conversation. But if I really wanted to, I could pretty much just open up the blinds on those windows and I'm going to have really good lighting, okay? Because the idea is the light is coming from that wall. It's shining towards my face. It's going to eliminate any of the shadows on my face and it's be very easy to see me, okay? So that's really what you want to remember is the direction of the light is important. And then the temperature and the brightness are also going to play a big part in that, okay?
Nick, can I comment on that too and just say that that's all, I mean, for most, I am the least techie, equipment guy, and I shoot probably the most video. But I'm always very careful. Like I'm sitting in my office and my windows are right here so that the light, I get good natural light. I'm using my laptop camera, by the way, and always do for webinars. It's good enough, but I'm never shooting like my promotional videos that way. I'm just doing webinars there. So I'm also ugly. So I want my camera to not be very clear so you can't see all of my blemishes. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
It's good. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice and fogged over, so we can hardly see your face, Jeff. No, I think you look great. No, and I think that's a huge point because if you have good natural light, you really don't a lot of times have to change the camera at all, right? I mean, you look great in that setup, and even the background is kind of like decently lit, all things considered. So we can see some of it, but it's not highlighted in a way that's distracting. And that's what you're going for, right? You want a background, and we're going to talk about backgrounds a little bit later, but you want a background that's got some stuff to look at, but isn't so cluttered or isn't so lit up that it's all I can look at, right? So a little bit of balance there definitely goes a long way. So, all right, let me think about what we've done so far. So we've put the lights on, and I'm going to show you those from the side here in just a minute to show you kind of the setup, but I want to continue implementing the different pieces. The next piece we want to add is a microphone. All right. So once we add the microphone, at that point, we've got our full studio set up, and then I'll talk a little bit about the background as well. But let's go ahead and do that next. So I've got 2 different microphones, and I probably should have done this first because I feel like this might be one of the bigger changes that we see today. But this is the first one I want to talk about. This is the Toner. I think it's the TC-777. And again, if I'm misquoting that, just check the document that we shared with you. But this is a cardioid mic. All right. So you can see that this is it's intentionally sort of a desktop style mic, right? So it kind of reminds me a little bit of what Jeff has in front of him, right? So if you look at it, it sort of looks the same with the pop filter on the microphone there. And what's nice about this is that so cardioid mics are obviously bigger, right? So you can see how large this thing is. It's definitely different. Here's my lapel mic. I'm also going to talk about this, a really tiny microphone. Then this is what's called a lavalier microphone, right? So they're 2 different kinds of mics. And what that allows you to do is the cardioid mic is going to be a lot more sensitive, and it's also directional, all right? What's cool about that is that means that I'm not going to pick up the other sounds in the room, okay? So when I make the change, and I still haven't switched the microphone yet, but when I make the change, that's the big thing I want you to listen to, okay? Now, when you're on Zoom, Zoom is compressed, so the quality of audio is always going to be reduced a little bit from that standpoint. So obviously, when I turn this mic on, it's probably not going to be the perfect audio that you've ever heard. But what I want you to listen for is the background reverberation, right? So right now, you're probably hearing sort of a fair amount of echo in the room. And let's go ahead and switch over to the TC-777 here. Okay, so at this point, I switched over. So you guys hearing the difference there?
Big time.
All right. So what are you noticing in terms of what's different about it?
There's not as much of the in the background as there was, and it's just super crisp. I mean, that's
right.
Big difference.
Yeah. No, and that's what I thought too when we were testing this out. Honestly, I tested this microphone against this one, which I still have sitting here. I'm not using it today. The price difference is for that one plus the boom mic there, or boom stand. I think we spent almost $300. This thing was like $40. All right. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me, like the kind of stuff you can get on the market right now. I mean, this isn't the fanciest microphone in the world. Like if you were a high-end musician, obviously you'd buy something nicer, but for $40 to be able to improve, like even just the clarity, right? And this is where I think this comes into play is
this is the kind of microphone I would use for meetings, right? Because you can see it. It's in the shot. There's really no getting away from it. And I do need to have it a kind of reasonable distance from my mouth for it to work correctly. If you know, I kind of lean back a little, you can start to hear, you know, it doesn't take much as you get further away for it not to be as clear. But, you know, it's really great if it's okay if it's in the shot, right? So you can shoot some videos with this. But there's there are some situations where you're not going to want to have a microphone right in the middle of the video you're creating. And I'm going to show you the lapel microphone for that in just a second. But for Zoom meetings, I mean, so at this point, I mean, just sort of compare where we started here versus what you're looking at right now, right? And so far, we've spent less than $200. Okay, I mean, that's really it. Like less than $200. We got some decent lights, which I can control literally in the middle of the meeting I'm having with this remote control right now. I've got a decent microphone, it's picking up nice and clear voice. I've got a decent camera, full 1080p HD camera, which again, if you're streaming, most of the time you're not even going to be able to stream in 4K anyway. So why do you even need a 4K camera? And I spent less than $200. And so what's going to happen, on the one hand, this is great for just a straight up home studio, but I also want you to think about it from this perspective, which is if people can look and sound better on their online meetings, eventually they will, right? So this is an opportunity to carve out an advantage for yourself. If you show up on a meeting, and because this happens to me all the time, I mean, I literally run a company that makes videos and teaches people to make videos. So I better look and sound pretty good during my Zoom meetings, right? Because I would expect people to judge me based on that and to be totally fair. So we made an effort to kind of set ourselves up here to make sure we look nice, but people comment on it all the time, right? I'll get on meetings and you'll almost, people will even sometimes say like, oh man, like I feel like I need to, spruce up my background compared to yours. Mine's not anything special, right? It's just some shiplap on a wall. It's just that we took the time to actually prepare and set up. And then once it's set up, it just sort of sits there, right? I mean, if you've got a little bit of space and you can put these lights and the camera and all that, it just sits there, right? Once you do it, you look and sound that much more professional. So this is just such a small, easy thing to do if you're proactive about it and you literally have all the links you need to set it up at this point. That's just going to make you look better, right? It's going to make you feel more professional. It's going to make you look more professional. And I really honestly believe that this is sort of the 20 to 2021 version of professional attire, right? We're going to get back out there and network again. Things are going to go back to normal eventually. But the new normal is going to incorporate lots of video communication. It's going to be lots of video meetings, lots of webinars, things like that. And if you can set yourself up now to look that much better than everybody else, I really do think that that's an easy competitive advantage, right? So for like 30 minutes of preparation and $200 to be able to differentiate yourself from a lot of your competition, it's sort of a no-brainer, right? So that's kind of how I see it. And then you've got this nice looking studio set up that you can record all kinds of other videos in, right? It's not just about Zoom meetings. Okay, so that's
Nick. One thing I want to mention is that with these microphones, at least mine, I don't know about yours, but notice how it's probably pretty crisp as I'm talking right now. Mm-hmm. But if I go over here, how crisp is it?
I mean, it's hard to hear you at that
exactly. Point. You notice that. So somebody asked about distance. So sometimes with these microphones, what's good about them is they're only picking up the noise that's right going into it, which is good when I'm at home and I've got a 2-year-old running around and an 11-year-old screaming and whatever, or contractors or whatever. But if you turn away and you keep talking, it doesn't sound very good. And so keep that in mind with these microphones.
No, that's a great point. And you guys will appreciate this. When I first set this thing up, I had it like this for like the first 15 minutes and I thought it didn't work because I had it backwards. And it doesn't. It was like, I was like, man, it's so quiet. Like what's wrong? And actually I had read some reviews that had said that. They're like, mine's really quiet and I can't get it to work. And then I set it up and within like 10 minutes, I was like, oh, it's freaking backwards, and it's directional. It's exactly right. So, so I got a good reminder of that firsthand. And so, that's one thing about cardioid mics is that they are going to be, it's very directional, right? So if you shift even just like a foot or so away from it, it does change the volume that's picking up. But that's why it doesn't get all that reverb, right? Because what it's not hearing, what this mic is not hearing right now, is my voice echoing off of all the walls and the ceiling and the computer that's in front of me, because it's not picking up sound from that direction, right? So for meetings, for things where you're going to be stationary and you're kind of sitting in one place, these are amazing. If you want to do a podcast, this is a great microphone for doing a podcast, right? Because it's gonna significantly reduce the amount of background noise you're getting, which is awesome. So Next thing I want to do here is I want to show you. So I think at this point, you know, we've established a pretty decent setup. We're about halfway through we got about 20, 25 minutes left. But there are a few more things I want to show you. But at this point, you hopefully kind of get the idea. Honestly, just looking at this on my end and kind of having heard the recording here, this is like maybe 5%, maybe 10% worse than my normal setup, you know, and my normal setup costs like $1,500+ because it uses a decent DSLR camera and it uses a $300 light and a $300 microphone. This was $200 total. I mean, it's really, it was kind of blowing my mind. We did the research for this, how affordable this stuff has gotten. So in my opinion, you know, just go ahead and do it. Right. So let's look at a couple of things you can do here. One thing I want to show you is the controls for the camera, because one of the things you're going to run into with with sort of this more affordable type of stuff is that you're going to sometimes run into some sort of tricky things you're going to have to do, right? So if you get this camera, this webcam, there's going to be default settings. One thing I noticed about it is it's extremely light sensitive. All right. So the exposure on it is turned way up naturally, which means that if you put too much light, and I'll give you a quick example of what I mean here. So for instance, if I had these lights turned up all the way, you see how my face like gets washed out. You almost can't see my face anymore. It just sort of looks like a glow. That's because there's too much light, right? The camera is actually at that point taking in too much light. And that's what makes me look like that. So wait, I think I just hit the wrong buttons on. This is the problem with so many settings on this light is I can't remember which one to press to make it look correct. Going backwards. Here we go. All right. So you might want to be able to adjust some of those things. So if you get this app, it's called the AMCAP. I'm not really sure what it stands for, but you can get it from the website for the camera. You can actually control everything that you see here, right? So I'm not going to mess with too much of this, but let me just give you a quick example. So for instance, I've got under video proc amp, that's where I can find all of the brightness, contrast, hue, all the sort of normal camera settings that you might want to control. And then if I switch over to camera control, this is where I can also control focus. Right now I have it set on autofocus, which I would recommend leaving it there unless, you know, you're having issues with it sort of, you know, autofocusing over and over and over again. And then exposure. Okay. And the one I really wanted to talk about here is exposure, because when this was set to default, it would have been like this with this much light on, right? So I actually had to come in here and I had to pull the exposure down. And if you go too far down, then it doesn't take in enough light. And so you have control over that, right? So what I recommend you do is I would actually just bump the exposure down slightly and then increase the light in the room, right? So let me give you sort of another example. So if I bump this down a little further, you know, now I'm too dark. And so what I can do is just sort of increase my light in the room, and you do it until you find a good balance of what you think looks right. Okay. Now, if you talk to a professional videographer, they're going to tell you to keep things like the exposure kind of as far down as you can and then compensate with light, because that gives you sort of the best quality image. Let's not get too technical here. All I'm trying to do right now is just show you how to avoid, you know, an image that gets just, you know, way too bright, right? So you can come in here, you can adjust the exposure, and that's one of the ways you can do with it. The other things you can control here, I mean, you've got brightness, you got contrast. I'm just going to mess with one of these just so you can see what happens. So like if you go all the way up on contrast, obviously that's way too much. You go way down, you're not getting enough. I think I had it set at 25. I'll just put it back there. So you can mess with all this stuff. The default settings are decent, right? But depending on the camera you're using, depending on the lights you have in the room, even just the ambient light, this is nice to be able to control, right? So if I couldn't control any of this, that would be a problem, because then I would have a lot less sort of influence. But the lights and being able to control the lights compensates a little bit for that. But that's how you do the controls. All right. Let's see here. Next thing I wanted to show you was the actual setup in the room. So let me stop my share again and switch cameras, because I want to show you. So the next thing I want to just sort of demonstrate here is what this setup looks like from the side, so you can see how to set it up yourself. Okay. Let me switch cameras. And while I'm doing this, if you guys have any questions that you've seen come through that we need to answer, let me know.
Yeah, we do. Let me scroll up here real quick. What is let's see here. How do you get rid of sound latency during live video?
Latency. So can you explain like kind of what exactly is happening? So you have like a delay on the audio connected to the
I would assume
video?
That's what that means. Yeah, that's probably more of an internet connection issue, correct?
Well, it depends on the software you're using. I mean, if you're using something like live stream software, sometimes you can add a delay on the audio or the video, so you can adjust that to sync them up. If you're on Zoom, I don't think there's anything you can manually do to fix that. So in that case, well, and if you want to let us know, yeah, what particular software you're on. If you're on Zoom, resetting things, plugging things in differently. I mean, it sounds stupid, but 9 times out of 10, like restarting a device tends to fix things. So that's usually my first step. But unfortunately, I don't think there's a manual control over the audio delay or the syncing with the video.
Multiple questions about using green screen. I'll take that answer first. My answer is love green screen. It's a great change of pace.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big proponent of changing your background. So you'll see when I shoot a lot of my videos, I'm all over the place, and green screen allows you to be in one place and be wherever you want to be. So I love green screen for that reason. It's super easy to use. I don't know if you guys have any other take on that.
I mean, I agree. I think, certain contexts call for different things, but I think green screen is the software and the different things that utilize green screen have exploded in the past even 18 months. And so I think now it's a lot more useful than it was even back then.
Agreed. To answer Corey's question, all of these webinars are always live in LabCoatAgents, so the Facebook group. So you can rewatch it there, and then they're all posted to YouTube, to LabCoatAgents YouTube page within a couple of days usually. So you can find them either place, YouTube or the LabCoatAgents Facebook group. There's other questions, but I'll let you keep going, and we can circle back to them.
Sure. Okay. So let's take a look. I'm switching cameras here. So there I am over sitting in my desk here, and I'm gonna switch microphones as well, so I can go mobile. So I'm actually, the next microphone I'm using is not one that I'm talking about today. It's my my wireless Rode Go mic, so that I can get up and move around the office a little here. So let me switch over to that. Okay, you guys hear me?
Very good. Yep.
Okay.
I can hear it rustling against your shirt.
Yeah, that you're gonna get a little bit of that, unfortunately, because I'm moving around right now, but I'll try to keep that to a minimum. So what I want to show you next, and obviously we're switching which camera we're talking to here, is I just want to show you kind of the setup, and I might move the camera around a little bit. First thing I want to show you here is where should you put the lights, okay? Now, obviously, my setup is that I have my desk here, and I've got, I'm going to say about 5 feet between my desk and the wall, okay? You probably don't need nearly that much space. You could figure out how to do this with maybe 3 feet between you and the wall. But I'm going to suggest that you have, somewhere 3 feet or more in front of you, right? So that's one of the challenges you're going to run into is if you want to use these softbox lights, you're going to need some room in front of you, right? A lot of you probably have, your desk up against a wall, and that could be an issue for this, right? So if you have that kind of situation, you might want to go with smaller ring lights. Or, again, if you have sort of a permanent setup, you could consider maybe mounting these to the wall. That's getting a little bit more advanced than I would suggest, but that would be an option. Now, in terms of where you want them, you have some wiggle room here, right? Now, the main thing is you just want to make sure that there's light coming from one side and light coming from the other, right? The rule of thumb is, really general is just going to be 45 degrees. So if I'm sitting here, this one's, right at about 45 degrees over to my left. This one's about 45 degrees to my right. If you want a nice, even light on your face, you're going to keep them about the same distance. Now I've got a closet here I'm running into, right? So I can only get this one so far over. So this one's actually probably a little bit closer. And that's also okay, because if you want to have one light a little bit brighter than the other, and you kind of create a little bit of shadowing on one side of your face, that is a fairly popular look, and some people like that. If you want it to be completely consistent, so if you want your face to be lit completely evenly without any shadows on it, in that case, you're going to want to have the lights the same distance from you, okay? Another thing that you're going to see here is the angle of the light. So I'll turn that sideways so you can kind of see the angle. It's tilted downward slightly. And then the lights are set up so that the center of the light is about where my head would have been as I'm sitting in this chair here, right? So the center of the light is about at eye level. Maybe you can go just slightly higher with the light, okay? Generally, the rule is going to be that you want the light shining a little bit down on you, okay? So either sort of straight or coming just a little bit down toward your face, all right? And then and then these again, in terms of how close they are, you can get them closer, in which case you might have to turn the intensity down. you can get them further away. And that's sort of the last thing I'll mention on these lights here, is that you don't need to worry about the exact distance they are from you, because you can control the brightness, right? So one of the things to remember is that the distance the light is from you is also one of the things that controls how bright it is, right? So if you end up getting lights that don't have the features that these do, where you can turn them, down and up and kind of just, I don't know how well you can see that on the camera right now, because it's probably actually adjusting to the light, but so you can kind of get the sense there, right? But since you can go up and down with these, it's going to give you some flexibility. You don't have to necessarily move them around. And actually, there was one more thing I'll do here, which is to just show you what these look like. Make sure I'm not breaking anything. Okay. So one of the things that's cool about these particular, I mean, these are big, right? You can see that this thing's kind of unwieldy, as I literally almost trip over it trying to move it. But I want to show you the inside of here real quick, and let me actually turn it off so you can hopefully see it. Okay, you can see that decently, all right? So I'm going to turn it on for just a second. You can see how bright it gets. Yeah, sorry, epilepsy warning. Apologize for that. Okay, so you can see inside of there, and you can see this big bulb, right? That's the LED light, and that's the one we're controlling with the remote control. And then you've got this reflective material. You've got this sort of box shape, which is why it's called a soft box. And then you've got this filter, it's actually called a diffuser that goes over the front of it, all right? And so I just want to show that to you really quickly, because I do want you to understand sort of the concept behind this kind of a light. You can use any kind of light you want, right? So if you want to get a ring light or something like that, that's absolutely fine. But what the softbox does for you that you're not going to get with other lights is it's essentially like it kind of turns it into one really big light, right? So these things are a good 2.5 feet tall, probably about 1.5 feet wide. And what that does is it gives you a much larger surface area for the light. And so it makes the light much softer, right? So instead of thinking of it like a flashlight, like a spotlight that's shining directly on one particular spot, it makes it more like a cloud, right? So when the sun shines through a cloud, the whole cloud lights up, and the light kind of just sort of falls gently over the entire area. There's no sort of beam, and that's actually really good for video. You want your light to be sort of spread out like that, right? So that's why soft boxes are going to be your sort of best bet when it comes to video lighting. And then obviously you've got options like with ring lights. I'd say ring lights are kind of a close second. So if you need to go with ring lights, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Tristan, do you say that you use ring lights typically?
I use a combination of course, depending on what room I am. Today I'm using a ring light right here, but I have the same setup as you do there with the two soft boxes as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Yeah. And I think both of those work. I mean, third place would probably be just like a straight up LED light without the softbox component. We've used those as well. Those are much more portable. A lot of them are battery powered, but the light is going to be harsher. It's going to be a little bit more like a spotlight. All right.
Hey, Nick, real quick. We've got a lot of people that have asked about ring lights, and my response is simply this. Most ring lights are fairly equal nowadays. There's a lot of options. You go to Amazon, if you're willing to spend about $50 to $75, you're going to get a solid quality ring light that has multiple brightnesses and tones, I think they call it. And they'll come with like a cell phone holder. So just search ring lights on Amazon, and $50 to $75, you're going to get a pretty good one.
Cool.
I don't think we have a recommendation for a specific brand because we all use different stuff, which is also a testament that there's tons of options.
Right. All right. One more demo. Sorry, I almost forgot about this one. We got too many demos today. All right. Last thing I want to just give you a quick example of. This is the lapel microphone, right? So where would a lapel microphone be necessary or useful? Well, this is going to be helpful for making videos that are not like a video meeting, right? So you're just shooting like a sort of a traditional talking head style video, maybe let's just say a market update or something. So I just wanted to give you a quick example of what that sounds like. So let me go ahead and switch over to it. Okay, so now I'm using the lapel mic. Is it super loud? Yeah, Jeff looks like his head's gonna explode. Sorry about that. Turn it down a little bit. All right, how about now? Is that better?
Better.
More reasonable at least. Okay, I'll switch off of this in just a second. But I just wanted to give you guys also an example of this one. And this one obviously is a little more sensitive, so we do need to adjust the volume based on that. But when I tested them, this one didn't sound drastically different than the toner microphone. But what are you guys thinking? I mean, did you have a preference between the two?
The ladder, that one, the one your hands on.
This
Yeah.
one, the toner.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I figured. Yeah.
Way better.
Okay. Yep. And that's going to be expected, right? Because basically what you're dealing with is this microphone sitting in front of me is a better microphone in terms of just the quality. I mean, look at how big it is, right? I'll take the windscreen off of it. I mean, look at the size of that compared to what I'm wearing on my shirt. Obviously, this thing's going to be able to pick up more detail and be a little bit more clear. But when it comes to hiding it, if I'm going to make a video, it's a lot easier to run this wire through my shirt and just clip this little microphone to my shirt rather than having this big bulky thing in the shot, right? So it just gives you some options. Honestly, you could buy both microphones, buy the webcam, buy the lights, and still have some money left over for the backdrop. So, you know, it's so affordable that you could probably have both options. But the lapel mic is great for anytime when you want to hide the microphone, and it works with both your phone and your computer or any camera of any kind. So if you do need to use it for doing like, you know, walk and talk style videos, I just switched back to the toner, by the way. So if you need to do like walk and talk style videos, you can plug it into your phone and you can use it to get great audio for any videos you make really anywhere that you go, right? So that's pretty cool. It also comes with, I don't think I have it next to me, but an extension cord that'll turn it into, I think, 15 to 20 feet long. So if you need to be a little bit further away from your phone, but still record really clean audio, you do have that option.
Nick, the lapel you were using is corded, but you can
Right.
get a wireless microphone lapel, but it's very expensive. What is the cost on that?
Well, the one I have here is the Rode Wireless Go. It was $200 when I bought it. And last time I checked, I think they may even be a little more expensive now. That being said, it's a really nice wireless setup. It's both has a built-in microphone in it, so you don't actually need another mic, but you can plug in other mics. So if you have a nicer lapel microphone, you want to plug into it and then just use it as a wireless transmitter, you can. There are cheaper options, but when it comes to getting a decent Bluetooth, because these all basically use Bluetooth signals, you know, you're going to want to invest some money, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it works at that point.
And I think the answer too, some people have asked about the brand of the lapel. I don't know if you recommend a brand. Same answer that I would give you to the ring light. There's tons of lapel option mics and fairly inexpensive on Amazon. I've got different brands. They all work very similarly.
Right. I mean, there's a range. I think this one it's called a Power DeWise is the brand. And we have used this one in the past. So that's a good one. There are some that are like $10 though. I mean, you know, you get what you pay for in some ways, but you know, if you're just really trying to get super, super simple, even the $10 mic can go a long way.
I usually, guys, just my recommendation, I usually try to buy mid-range. I usually don't spend the most and I don't spend the least. Just that seems to work. And one more thing I mentioned, you can get different arms. Like I have an arm, like you can get a microphone arm so you can attach it to your desk, because somebody was, I think Brian was asking about typing and talking on your microphone. So that way you don't have to set it on your desk like some people do. I think Tristan has one of those. I haven't, you know, it's an arm and you can do it. I can flip it the other way. So the microphone's up high, I can flip it around. But I use it here because I use it for branding.
Smart. I need to get, I obviously just got this, but I need to get something like that. Cool. Let's see here. Last couple slides before we get wrapped up. We want to talk about background, because I do think background is an important part of your video studio setup as well. For everything that we included here, you still have some money left. So even, like I said, even if you wanted to buy both of the microphones, the camera, the lights, you would still have $75 or so, something in that range left for your background, right? And your background is super important here. I mean, there's sort of two sides to this, right? Either one, your background can be too boring, right? So if the only thing you have behind you is like just a straight up white wall, nothing whatsoever, like that, you know, it's not doing anything for you. It's certainly not distracting, but you could be utilizing that space a little bit better. You can go the branded direction. I mean, obviously, you've probably seen great examples of that. Jeff's he's got kind of an example of that with his microphone with the branding on it. Some people will put, you know, their logos on the wall behind them. I'm kind of a fan of just trying to make yourself look kind of clean and professional as much as possible. So you can see the two screenshots on the screen right now. One is literally just the setup I'm in, right? So I've got shiplap behind me. We usually have a a light that I'll put behind me as well, which just kind of gives it a little bit of, a little difference, so to speak. I'm not using it today because I didn't want to include the light is like $100 on its own. So I didn't want to include that because it didn't fit in our package deal. So I wanted to be completely accurate to the offer we're sending, or with the information we're sharing with you today. Behind me is shiplap. If you want to go that route, it's $29 per box. You could probably cover the area that you see behind me right now with 2 boxes. That's not going to cover the whole wall. I think we got 5 or 6 to cover that entire expanse of wall. But you can't see the whole thing, right? So you don't necessarily need to do that. So technically, within the $300, you could get everything we've talked about today and enough boxes of this material at Home Depot to get the wall behind you covered, right? So, I mean, again, this stuff doesn't have to cost all that much. That being said, a lot of you have a situation in your house, like, so the second picture you see there is over here to my right. And what I did is we put a little shelf on the wall there. We've got the book on it. We've got a little chalkboard. There's, just a couple little items sort of on the shelf. And that just gives me another context where I can scoot over. I can put my camera about 4 feet over. And then you'll see that corner, and that just gives you a couple other things to kind of include in your shot, right? So your favorite books, brands or things you care about. I love like little tchotchkes that tell a story. So if you like to travel and you have a lot of souvenirs, things like that, you can put on there. I think the idea is just to sort of share some of your personality with what you're showing on the wall there. You can paint a wall a certain color. It's another great way to do this, right? But again, you're just trying to make sure that you're doing something that looks clean. I think that's really the key here. I mean, the thing I think is the worst of any of the examples you could give is somebody who just has lots of junk behind them, right? So you get on a Zoom call. We had a student for a while that we were doing Zoom calls with him, and he was in his basement with just like mountains of boxes behind him, just like all these moving boxes. And it's like, not the best look, right? So you just want to make sure that you keep that sort of stuff in mind, as you want to have as clean of a background as possible. One thing to remember when it comes to a Zoom meeting is, unlike an in-person meeting where, you didn't control the setting. I mean, maybe you chose the location and that could have an impact on you, but it's not like you did the decoration in the restaurant, right? Well, it is like that when you're on Zoom. So, everything in the shot, people are going to be judging you for to a small degree. And so just keep that in mind, right? So I think at the very least, just clean up the clutter, put things into nice little stacks, consider what it is you have laying around. The last thing you want is to be trying to meet with somebody, and all they're trying to do is look into the background of your video to see what is that laying over there, or is that what I think it is? You definitely don't want that kind of stuff going on during your Zoom meetings. Dude, I'm like definitely paranoid about, like, there's so many cameras in my house at this point. I'm just like, you gotta always keep everything as cleaned up as possible. You never know who's watching, right?
Is that what I think it is? That's hilarious.
All right, see what else we got. We got a couple more slides to wrap things up. I think I've already been basically talking about this the entire time, so I don't really think we need to talk too much about it. But I do want to finish with a couple tips just about Zoom etiquette, because again, I think this stuff is just getting more and more important. Number one is, we get this question a lot, is like, how necessary is it that I turn my camera on during a Zoom meeting? And I'll tell you right now, like, please turn your camera on. I don't think there's any reason not to. Nobody cares what you look like. Nobody's going to judge you, just for who you are. Obviously, if you don't clean yourself up a little bit, like you should always do before any meeting, that's not going to come across well. But we're not going to hold it against you if you're not wearing the fanciest clothes in the world, right? We just want to be able to see you, because it's like having a phone conversation versus having an in-person meeting. If I can see you, it feels like an in-person meeting. It's going to feel that much more meaningful. I'm going to probably remember more of it. If I can't see you, we're not going to get nearly as much of that. So it's almost like I could have just shot you a phone call if I can't actually see you. Okay. So keep that in mind. We talked about dressing professionally. That one's kind of a no-brainer. One that I will really emphasize that I think is easy to forget is test your internet connection. Make sure you've got a fast internet connection, because you don't want to get onto these and have a bad connection, right? So sometimes you can't control that stuff. But some of you, for instance, have a phone. You could get on your phone connection. I mean, you do have backup options. And if you get on and your internet sucks and it cuts out a bunch of times, and that's something you could have avoided just by testing it and then maybe switching to your phone instead, you want to do that stuff ahead of time, right? And then obviously we've talked about lighting and audio. The basic tips. I think we've covered them all at this point. No overhead lights, face your light source. Another one actually we didn't mention is get away from vents or loud noises, right? So one that you don't think about much is just the air vents in your house. If you can get away from the air vents, you're going to cut down on that background noise. and then test everything beforehand. Obviously, we did a lot of testing before I went live today, but that's going to be a super important one to pay attention to. Okay. Okay, so we are getting to the end of the presentation. I did just drop some more links into the chat as we get wrapped up here, because the last thing I wanted to mention is the Business Video School tour and demo. So I included 2 links in the chat. One is our link tree. It's got links to everything you could ever want, you know, our YouTube, our Facebook page. Please click on it. Please check out everything that's listed there. But the biggest one I wanted you to know about is our tour and demo. And we have 2 more of these coming up this year. So one's on the 17th, one's on the 22nd. Right now, we are in the process of developing a video marketing roadmap, right? So this is something that our students have been asking for a while. It's something we've wanted to build for a while, but we are going to be building out a roadmap that shows you step by step absolutely everything you should be doing to implement an entire video marketing system into your business, right? We're making some adjustments inside of Business Video School, and moving forward, once we get into 2021, your entire path through the school is going to be based on that roadmap. So you're going to have literal step-by-step sort of actions you can take. We're going to have some certifications that you can earn along the way. And we're going to show you exactly how to go from being a total video novice to being a total video pro, being somebody who's using video to attract business to yourself on a consistent, regular basis and no longer having to chase it anymore. So I wanted to mention that because I would really recommend, if you've thought about checking us out, if you wanted to learn more about Business Video School, I'd highly recommend you get on one of these tours. All right. If you click that link in the chat that I just dropped a second ago, you can get registered for either one of them. But you're definitely going to come find out more about us before 2021. So you can see if we're a good fit to help you with this. Because I think that getting started on that roadmap right at the beginning of the year would be a huge advantage, right? It's a great opportunity right as we're able to release it, because I think that's going to come out within the first week or 2 of January is about when it'll be ready, right? So I just wanted to mention that real quick. Links in the chat if you want to check it out. I think we have a webinar after that, so we probably got to get running. Did we have any time for any final questions, or should we hop off?
Oh, we really got to go. The only questions were a couple people. I just want to reference that we don't have time to cover on the Go stuff. Gimbal is again, this was all about a home studio. So we will definitely do future webinars about on the Go equipment, gimbals, all that sort of stuff. And you can find a lot of that stuff inside Business Video School. So go check it out.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, guys. Good to see you.
You as
Thanks,
well.
Thanks for being here.
See you guys.
Talk to you later.
Thanks for being on.